Walang ibang makakaunawa sa lalaki kundi kapwa lalaki. Nobody can understand a man except a man. And yet, because of our own problems and struggles and insecurities, sometimes it's so difficult to open up to other men for fear that we may be looked down or rejected or even sometimes condemned. And yet we realize all of us share common struggles, common hurts and wounds. And that's why it's time together to come together and be able to help each other become better men. We are not perfect men, but we choose to learn and become better men by the grace of God. Can we say that together? We are not perfect men, but we choose to learn and become better men by the grace of God. You know, history begins to change when men begin to take up their divine calling and purpose to be shapers of the nation and shapers of the generations to come. In fact, in the Bible, we see that God always begins with a man. When God is about to effect change in history, He will always begin with a man. And for those of you who know the Bible, you know that from the very book of Genesis, God always starts with a man. God created Adam before He created Eve, and He made a covenant with Adam before Eve was created. His whole purpose was invested in the man and expected the man to take leadership of the woman, his wife. But of course, we know that is where the man failed right from the very beginning. The fall of man is really the product of the failure of Adam to take full leadership over his wife. And that is why we often say leadership and manhood are synonymous. As you develop your leadership qualities, you develop your manhood in the eyes of God. Not all leaders are men, but all men were meant by God to take leadership, beginning in our own families. Okay? So tonight we're going to go back a little bit to the values and the core values of our movement. Men of Integrity International is a place where men help men become better men. Okay ba yun? Okay? So we are men helping each other become better men. Ed Cole said, becoming male is a matter of birth. Becoming a man is a matter of choice. We don't become men simply by biological birth. In fact, sabi nga po ni Dr. Ed Cole, one of the reasons why there's so much failure in society is because there are more boys out there than there are real men. It's a very bold statement by Ed Cole, but it is true. The reason why there's so much failure in society is because there are more boys out there than there are real men. And because of a wrong concept of manhood that we were read up in the Philippines, the machismo concept, and we have discussed that in the conference, we have not really fully understood the full meaning of what it means to be a man, but we were reared up in an ideal that actually brought out the worst in us. So many homes have been broken and damaged because of the machismo mentality. So many men fail to really grow up to their full potential because of machismo mentality. And that's why we need to find out what is the true definition of manhood. And we began to see in our conference that what summarizes God's definition of manhood is already in Micah chapter 6, verse 8. Only God who created us has the right to define who we are. Okay? And in Micah 6:8, we read this, He has showed you, O man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. There are three core values here. Number one is integrity. To act justly means to do what is right in the sight of God and men. And then the second one is mercy. Actually, the word mercy in the original language carries the idea of faithful love and commitment to others. And it can also be understood as mercy or compassion for others. And that begins in our family, our love for our family, our love for our wife and our children. That's where that begins. And finally, to walk humbly with your God, which is the very foundation of manhood, which is spirituality, to walk humbly with your God. You see, when God created Adam, the very first thing He did was to put him in the garden, the place of intimate fellowship with God, before He created the woman. God wanted to have relationship with the man, to have fellowship with him, because it is in that relationship that the man draws his strength to fulfill God's purpose for him. And that is why spirituality is the foundation of our integrity and our compassion for other people. What is the purpose of this movement? It is to mentor men for effective godly leadership and influence in the home, the church, workplace, community, and the nation. So the purpose of this movement is to help mentor men. You know, the sad thing is that almost all of us were never mentored in terms of what manhood really means, right? Even our fathers did not know what it means to be a real man. Often their concept of manhood is being macho, okay? And that means being always ready to defend your ego when somebody hurts you. And sometimes that can be violent and reckless. Or sometimes by demonstrating your sexual virility by impregnating women. The more women, the more macho you are. And that is why this has already brought a lot of damage to all those areas in the home. Even leaders in the church sometimes fall into temptations to adultery. In the workplace, okay, community, and the nation. What is our goal? Our goal is to fulfill the requirement of God in Micah 6:8 to build men characterized by spirituality, integrity, and compassion. Can we say those three words? Spirituality, integrity, and compassion. No nation can be greater than the kind of man it produces. Each man, and that's you, is a seed of future generations. And his character determines the character of future generations. You see, when God looks at us as men, He doesn't look at you only as an individual. He looks at you as a generational person. Because how you live your life today is going to affect generations to come. I don't know if you have noticed that in families where adultery takes place, you will notice that the next generations, you'll find adultery taking place at every generation. Okay? And integrity practice in one generation will be carried on to generations to come. You see, how we live today in the face of our children, in the face of the youth of our time, influences their understanding of what it means to be a man. And that is why we have a great role to play, because we are the seeds of future generation. Our character determines the future. In fact, a Beijing academic, he is an academic thinker, once said, "The struggle for our character is the struggle for the nation's character." And we repeat what this Beijing academic thinker said. The struggle for your own character is a struggle for the nation's character. Because our character is going to affect others around us. And if we want to have a godly nation, it has to begin with me modeling that kind of character I want to see in the nation. And this is what I was sharing a while ago. Ed Cole, author of Maximize Manhood, the reason why families fail and societies fall is because there are more boys out there than there are real men. And we'll see in a little while, later on, what it means to be a man. God's purposes for the nations always begins with a man that will model and carry out His mandate for His generation and the next ones. Can you look at the man beside you and tell him, you're affecting future generations? Let's do a good job. Okay. I shared this in the conference, but let me review it for a while. What is the mandate of God for men? The primary mandate of God for man is already modeled to us by His purpose for Abraham. Let me share this with you. Abraham, God said, will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. Do you want to be a blessing to the nation? Right, okay? And all nations on earth will be blessed through him, for I have chosen him. So can you say to the person beside you, God has chosen you as a man? Okay. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. And what did he promise him? That he will be a great and powerful nation. This is a powerful lesson here. And the lesson here is this, that the foundation of the building of a great and godly nation is the father-son relationship. That's where everything begins. We cannot therefore neglect how we relate to our sons and to our children. Because whether we like it or not, whatever they have seen in us, whatever has affected them from the way we live and from our convictions, from our values, are going to affect theirs in their generation. Fathers are not just rearing up children, they are building a nation through them. And we need to understand this. When you look at your children, you're talking about generations to come. And what kind of generation they will be affects the future of the nation. How many of you are tired of all the corruption and the evil in our generation? How many are tired? Okay. You know, we need to be so desperately tired enough to do something about it. And what can we do? Because there are powers that be that control the decisions of many at the top. But you know, you don't have to wait for change from the top to take place. Change can begin where everybody comes from. Everybody up there came from down here. And we can start the change down here by beginning to focus on building a next generation that will truly be a true generation of hope for the nation. How many have heard of Thaksin Shinawatra, former Prime Minister of Thailand? Thaksin Shinawatra. Thaksin Shinawatra said, every politician looks to the next election. A statesman looks to the next generation. If we focus on the next generation, we can do a lot of change. Do you believe in what he said? You see, politicians are always thinking about the next election. What differentiates a politician from a statesman is that a politician is more concerned about maintaining his position and power, while a statesman is more focused on the good of the people and willing to sacrifice himself in order to alleviate the suffering of the poor and to build the right values in the people. A statesman is somebody who will serve the people at the sacrifice of himself. And a statesman knows that the only way you can build a better future for any nation is to focus on inspiring the next generation. One of the statesmen that I have personally known is no other than Dr. Jovito Salonga, former Senate President. There was a time that God has given me the privilege to work with him in an advocacy we started in Manila called Building a Nation of Character. He became my personal advisor. And I've learned so much from the wisdom of this man. In fact, he once confided with us, and it's okay to share this with you because you know what has been happening in our country. He said, do you know why I left the Senate? And I said, why? Because the Senate is dead. That is not the kind of Senate we started before. There's a lack of integrity, a lack of real vision for the people. And that's why I left the Senate. I learned a lot from him. And I just wish that, he's not a perfect person. But the wonderful thing about Dr. Salonga is that he has learned so much that he is able to impart great wisdom. His passion is to bring about change by focusing on the next generation. What he's been doing all these years is mentoring lawyers. Lawyers who are still studying law. He will bring them to his center and then he will mentor them. He believes that the only hope of the future are these young people. And is willing to invest his life to mentor them with all the wisdom that he has learned through the years. He is truly a statesman because he focuses on the next generation. And I tell you, we as men can do a far better job than what Jovito Salonga is doing because God has entrusted to us our sons and our children to mentor them in the right convictions and values that will make the biggest difference in their lives so that they make a difference for their generation. It all begins with us today. That's why we are not just rearing up children, we are building a nation through them. You see, there's even a warning in the Bible, and this is in Malachi chapter 4, verse 5 to 6. Look, God is saying, I'm sending you the prophet Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord arrives. His preaching will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of children to their fathers. Otherwise, I will come and strike the land with a curse. What is God saying? If the father-son relationship is not restored, is going to jeopardize my purpose for a nation. Because the foundation of the building of a great and godly nation is that father-son relationship. And if that is not restored, that is not reconciled, I will strike that land with a curse. You understand this? Our role as men and as fathers of the next generation play a central part in God's purpose of building godly and great nations. And that is upon us to focus on, because we know there is no other way. There is no other way. This is God's way of changing a nation. It begins with you and me as men of our generation. That's why Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, the righteous man lives for the next generation. When you pursue integrity in your life, you're not doing that for yourself, you're doing that for the next generation, as that will influence their life, because they're always looking for role models to follow. The next generation cannot be a hope for the nation if they do not have enough role models to inspire them to the right values and convictions. The compromises of one generation will surely lead to the corruption of the next. History has proven this over and over again. We compromise today, we corrupt our children in the next generation. But the integrity of one generation will lead to the empowerment of the next to become a generation of hope. You know, we have so many superstars and celebrities right now, right? What the nation needs are not more celebrities. What we need are more heroes. And heroes are people who think less of themselves and willing to sacrifice for the good of the majority. And I tell you, we need to be those heroes now for our next generation, so that they become the heroes of their generation.